How's it going, YouTube? Come at you today with another video, and today, guys, what the brand new is going to be wearing a Handtrap. I'm very excited for this edition because we have Fire King, Generaider, and much more. There's a lot to talk about this format, and I feel like a lot of the different decks have evolved, especially just talking about different places to Handtrap, and we'll talk about that more with matchups like Unchained. So I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium, Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, RW, Grimoire, or ChainLink, definitely go ahead and check them all down below in the description. I did make a Patreon, so if you do want to go ahead and support that, go down below as well and go look for that. There's a lot of really cool tiers and different things that you can get out of them too. I really want to make sure that I can give back as much as possible, as I always do say, because I do believe in that. So whether it's deck help, answering questions, definitely go on there, and then I'll be able to support back as much as you support in. And I really do appreciate it because this will directly support the channel. If you're not already subscribed, definitely go ahead and consider subscribing because we're on our way to 30,000, and that's right around the corner, and that's very exciting. So let's go ahead and talk about our first deck here. That's going to be Infernoble. Now, this deck is a menace, especially when you look at those 5 cards in your hand, you don't see a hand trap. It definitely feels like a huge uphill battle when you go to beat this. I did play against this twice at the regional, so there's definitely a lot of interactions that you really have to know. Starting off with getting rid of Phoenix Blade, because this is one thing that your opponent will use to target Angelica, to use the Angelica effect to summon out a Roland from the extra deck. There's another thing where if it's equipped to something, they can go ahead and bring back the Turpin. So that's something that you really want to make sure you get rid of as soon as possible. Same thing with when your opponent uses Turpin effect, you can just use DD Crow or Bell, which is fine because this card is also just another menace that just comes out of the graveyard. A lot of graveyard effects. If you can Dweller this deck, I do recommend it. Going ahead and shutting down the Renaud is really important too. This is something where you don't really want to negate the Isolde because you just want to shut down whatever the Isoldes bring out, and usually it's Renaud. So at that point, you go ahead and just Imperm, Mourner, Veiler on the Renaud. If you go ahead and stop the Isolde too early, they can just make the second one as well. So at least wait for the second effect if you are going to negate the card. Same thing with an Ash. If all you have is an Ash, then just shut down the second effect of Isolde. If you have like Ash Imperm, then Imperm the Renaud, and then Ash the Museum. I'd prefer ashing Museum over anything, but you can ash the Wanted spell too, because like the Wanted engine at the end of the day is just an increased consistency to see your cards, right? So if that's something where you're just trying to get to like your Renaud or what have you, then that's actually a really good spot to ash. You don't want to wait for the original Sinful Spoils because then they just get the trade back with the card and a draw anyway. So you just go ahead and shut it down right at the beginning. But ashing Museum is definitely my more preferred spot, and then going ahead and just shutting down the Renaud is always going to be your best bet. Rescue Ace, not a whole lot's changed. Again, you can shut down the Diabell Star, but at the same time, you're just going to hit the Turbulence. It's just the best spot. This is something where a lot of times you want to shut it down just right on the summon, because if your opponent already has an SP, then you want to make sure that they can't just like chain SP, right? Which is just unfortunate. If they do have Preventer, then they can go ahead and send their Preventer to bring back the Turbulence if they do use the SP to banish the Turbulence. So that's something also to consider. That's why I sometimes really like just hitting the Diabell Star, because this deck does have a huge inconsistency issue if you do shut off its main way to get to its level 1 and whatnot. Ashing the Emergency as well, going to be your best bet for Ash. You can Ash things like Pros, but it's really weak. I would just go ahead and stop the Emergency, especially if you have like Imperm, because you go like Imperm and then they chain Emergency and you Ash it and they pass. Pretty fun, honestly. Ash on Emergency is too clean, but this is something that I think is going to be really important moving forward to know, is that the Diabell Star engine shutdown is about to be a lot more important with the Fire King deck, and we'll talk about that when we get there. Unchained, this is something that I was talking about a little earlier. This is actually going to be the Imperm Veiler under the tour guide. Now, this is really interesting because we talk about Sarama a lot as far as being the shutdown spot, and you can do that, but a lot of people have started realizing that if you do shut down the tour guide, it's not a good time for your opponent. And this is something where they could have the Shavara, and so this is something that we've seen a lot in like Sword Soul as well. It's like, well, if they have the circle, we probably just lose. But when they didn't have the circle, pretty crazy. And I feel like this is just the same logic, right? If you shut down the tour guide and it goes through, it's gonna be a rough one. If it gets missed by like the Shavara, then they're gonna pop off a little harder. But at the same time, I do think that there is a lot of warrant into hitting the tour guide instead, just because once this card is shut down, they don't get the Rhino Send, they don't get an immediate Yama, right? So I do think this is still more correct here. If I only have a Veiler and Imperm, I'm just hitting the tour guide and hoping that Shavara is not there. Ash in the first trap is definitely fine. You can hit Prosperity in this deck. I don't have a problem with that because a lot of times people are just trying to find things like the Shavara or even trying to get to a trap so they can pop it. So that's something where ashing Prosperity in this matchup just feels a little bit more correct. You can go ahead and ash things like the Yama, but usually it's chain blocked by the Shavara. So not always your best bet, but definitely the first trap is fine. You can bell the effective chamber. So like, let's say you try to like clear their board, or like you try to evenly. They'll go ahead and like pop away their board and keep the chamber. And then on new chain, they'll go chamber, revive the rage, and you just like bell the chamber. You also can just bell the effective Shyama or bell the effective Yama, which is also fine. Bell, I think, comes in the format a little harder this format just because, like, the card itself obviously isn't bad. We've seen it in multiple formats where Bell has just been crazy. And I think that it might be relevant enough to see as, like, a 2-of in the sideboard moving forward. We'll have to see what the ban list does, of course, but still really relevant as a card. I think it's still pretty good. If you have a really big issue with the Caesar, then I do think that you just hold the Imperm for the Caesar. Definitely fine. Something that I see myself doing quite often, because if I know there's no other way that I clear it or play around it, then you just have to hold the Imperm. And then, of course, using Crow on the Shyama or the Yama as well is perfectly fine. But make sure that you Crow the Shyama before they use the effective Shyama, because they'll still destroy whatever they target if you do Crow the card. So definitely make sure that you're doing that preemptively. Rikka Sunavalon, this is a deck that just randomly keeps popping up. It won't go away. Ashing Sowing is always going to be correct, and then using Imperm or Veiler onto the tribute effect of Jasmine. I wouldn't just blink the card right away if they go for the add, because add's also not once per turn. They usually try to do this more than once per turn. I'm probably just going to wait until they tribute a monster to summon one from deck, because a lot of times they're trying to get to like Borea so they can get to the Regulus engine. So I'm just going to wait till they tribute something and then just Imperm it. If all you have is an Ash Blossom, you also could potentially just hold it for that tribute effect to summon, which is also fine. But if you just hold all the way to Jasmine and then just like flat out negate the Jasmine, it's a really hard time for your opponent to play. Again, they can just make a second one just like the Isolde plays. So I do like waiting for the tribute to summon, but at the same time, hitting the Jasmine is just the most correct. Now, Fire King. Let's talk about this, because I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. Imperm Mortar Veiler on Diabellstar. I think this is extremely important because Kieran is a card. Kieran is a quick effect, destroy a card that you control. It's like a Shavara in terms of the tour guide and the board and being able to dodge. So the Diabellstar is getting you to your Snake Eye Ash, which is allowing you to get to Ponix, or the Populace post-Fini. But so shutting down the Diabellstar engine is by and large your best bet in this matchup. It's something that you really want to do. Again, they cannot go ahead and just like Kieran pop their Diabellstar, but they definitely can Kieran pop their Ash. And that card's also very crazy because that allows you to just E-telly out the Flameburge. So definitely want to make sure that you're just shutting down the Diabellstar engine here. Ash on Fire King Island is also very important because in new Garunix, once you pop a Fire King, allows you to add that card to your hand, and then once the resolution hits, you can summon the Garunix. Then when it's summoned, you can pop one from your deck. So definitely go ahead and just Ash the Fire King Island. You could Ogre it too, but Ogre, again, still not that relevant yet. Maybe at some point we do see it, but not right now. Bell on Flameburge. I think this is one thing that a lot of people are really just overlooking at the moment. The end board of Fire King sucks. Like, we all are already noticing that. The end board is deceivingly good, but at the same time, there's a really clean way to just shut off +4. And it's realistically when your opponent goes activate Kieran in hand to pop the Flameburge in their hand to summon back 2 level 1s, because at that point they're just summoning back Ponix or summoning back Ash, getting a double search. Then they get the effect of the Garunix if they have another one. They can IP into a huge Apo. There's a lot that they can do. So if you just go ahead and bell the Flameburge on your own turn when they try to get rid of it, really impactful. So that's one thing that I definitely recommend is holding the Bell for that. And this is where I was talking about potentially playing Bell won't be that bad of an option for you. And also against the Dogmatika variant, Droll is your best friend. Like, Droll is super crazy in the matchup. But Fire King Dogmatika is definitely the weaker build, but Ash or Bell onto Nadir Servant is going to be the best because this is like their best starter in this deck, which is pretty crazy to call Nadir Servant a starter, but it really is what it is in this matchup. You dump Garura, you get a draw, you search the Maximus, Maximus banishes the Garura, Maximus dumps the Shurag, Shurag notices there's only one winged beast, so now you can go ahead and add the Ponix, normal Ponix, Ponix gets you to Fire King Island, so definitely a really clean way to go ahead and just stop it all together by just Asher Bell onto the Nadir Servant, and then Imperm or Valor onto the Maximus, so that your opponent can't get more value. So that's something to really consider. This is why a lot of people, we've been seeing even some of the Christmas package come back. If you're not familiar with the Christmas package, it's not the same Christmas package that we played, because it used to be like Cyber Dragon, Nova, Makaba, and then Intus. Just because they knew if a Maximus came down, they would dump the Nova and they would dump the Intus and get a pop and a summon. So it was pretty fun. Something that we used to do, but now it's just like Garura Intus, right? So it's still a lot of value, right? But Maximus, definitely interesting. This card's like $28 for like a terrible line of play. But at the same time, this is something that you definitely will see, so be on top of your hand trap locations for this matchup. So the next one here is going to be Labrynth. Bell on the Big Welcome, of course, or you can Ash either Welcome, and then Imperm Valor onto Ariane. This is not really changed at all. Definitely just another matchup that you'll keep seeing moving forward unless we get a slaughter ban list. The next thing here is Generaider. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about this because this is a really uncommon matchup, but still pretty scary if you play against it. So let's talk about that. I would hold the Imperm for the Exceed for sure. There's a lot of cards in this board that can go ahead and just stop a lot of the effects that you do, so it's also kind of scary. But this Exceed is also just wild, being able to summon the Jormungandr, and then you're able to just attach a bunch of cards from your opponent's field and grave, which is also really crazy. So definitely make sure that if you have an Imperm, you're just holding it for this one right here. This is pretty crazy. But you can also Imperm Mourner Valor onto Mardell. Because you're making sure that your opponent can't get to things like the boss stage, they can't get to the trap, which is also really impactful because it changes the effect of whatever you're going to do in response to a Generator card, which can be very annoying as well. You can Ash the Lopter, but I do like Ashing Monstrosity if your opponent has that, because this card allows you to summon out 2 more level 9s from your deck. So you get Enter Blafnird, which is a card that allows you to rip from your opponent's hand, which is really crazy. And then it allows your opponent to then go ahead and use both Enter Blafnirs and go into a UDF, Utopic Draco Future, which is also very scary. So hitting the Monstrosity is your best bet. You can hit the Lopter, but probably Monstrosity. Then also Hela allows you to go ahead and Reborn out of the graveyard, so you can go ahead and just Bell that, which is also very fun. The next matchup here is Branded Chimera. A lot of us love our graveyard. You want to make sure that you Bell the Phantom Beast from bringing back the Anubis. If you do Crow the Anubis on the target, then you have to worry about the new fusion to bring it back from the Banish Zone as well. So it's something else that you kind of want to make sure that you're playing around. Bell on the effect of Phantom Beast to Reborn the Anubis is the more clean line, but having DD Crow is definitely fine because then you can then burn the other cards. So once it's on board, you can just deal with it one time instead of twice, which is also very annoying. I remember I dealt with it with the Super Poly, and then I had a Tear Cache on my board, used Scream to make it 500 less, and ran it over again. So definitely very important to get rid of this in a lot of decks. But a very scary card nonetheless. Ash on Sword Knight, that never changes, and then Imperm Mourner Valor onto the Berthmet on Summon, still going to be the best bet for you as well. SP against this deck is actually really crazy because you just play Keep Away with Berthmet and keep getting rid of it, so also very nice. The next thing here is going to be Dragon Link. So Dragon Link hasn't really changed a whole lot. You're still going to negate the Romulus. If they open Chaos Space, which is just a 1-of now, then you can Ash that, but more importantly, you're going to be seeing a lot more Dragon Ravine, so definitely go ahead and just Ash the Ravine when they go to pitch one. It's going to be your best bet. And then if you use DD Crow when your opponent uses the effect of Heretic Seal to tribute, you'll still get bounced, but at the same time, your opponent cannot summon because it's not going to be in the grave where it attributed to. on resolution, so your opponent won't be able to summon from deck, which is a really important interaction. I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. Definitely let me know what you think about down below. The Fire King matchup is definitely going to be really popular with everyone buying all the structure decks, so I do hope that little tidbit did allow you to be able to win a couple of your matches against that. If you haven't checked out my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, or Metafy page, definitely go ahead and check it all out down below in the description. I hope everyone has a wonderful night. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.